Hey all, welcome back to our yet another interesting session with one more interesting parent, homeschooling parent, Ketika. And we are going to be discussing today a very interesting and hardcore topic. Out of all the career options, I mean, we discussed about finance, biotechnology, biomedical engineering, IT, languages, and so many other fields. But today we are going to talk about something which is very new and interesting even for me because I myself am so curious to know more about it. It is about understanding how to be or how to work with the Fauj without actually being a Fauji. So this is the phrase that Ketika only taught me and a couple of minutes ago, and I have happily used it. So without wasting much time any further, please, Ketika, introduce yourselves and introduce us to this fantastic topic as well. Over to you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Amrita. I really appreciate you doing the series of videos where it's going to help a lot many more parents. I have only asked a lot to refer to these videos. So today, as I'm here, I'll start with. So I primarily work as a communication consultant and an educational consultant. I have lived a very long corporate life of being the South Asia communications head for a number of companies, which coincidentally also happen to be defense companies like and aviation and big aviation companies. From there, I know that I have moved on to being an educational consultant also now, and because of course, I a lot know that because of my daughter, and I am a gifted educator. I primarily work with children and with families with high ability children who are above average, as well as twice exceptionality, as well as thrice exceptional children from the rural background. I am associated with education, and got introduced to it because of my father, who was in the army, who retired from the army, and then after that did his PhD in education and was the vice chancellor of two universities, and has published books and was also a chairman with NAC, which is the National Association for Accreditation of Colleges. He was also a very closely associated with NEP 2020 when it was in the draft phase before it was introduced.
Wow.
And so the entire scenario in our house also with me is someone I had a very interesting in discussions about negatives of NEP 2022. So I have a very close perspective of both sides of positives and negatives, and
Amazing.
I personally am now working primarily with children, high ability children under the age of, who are under the age of 18, let's say, to help them.
That's
And gifted education programs, bring policy changes. All this, why I am into this is because of the exposure I had as a child. My father was in the army and we were very clear. So I always say my education took place outside the school. I'm a KV product. Every weekend, we were very clear. My father ensured that we learn something new. We used to go out, either it's through treks or, and irrespective of exams, there were nothing. But this came into our family, it came from both my parents' side, because my father was an engineer, but he was the first person who received the President's Gold Medal for doing work on creating artificial limbs in the Artificial Limb Center in Pune.
Wow. Oh.
He was the first engineer to be posted there. And he has award for that.
Wow.
So he was an engineer, but his talent was identified and he was put in a medical institute to create artificial limbs, and he worked a lot on Jaipur foods. So that from where it started. Then after that, we moved around a lot with him. And then he got opportunities to not. So he was an engineer, so he never went out on the battlefield. He never had to. He was responsible. So there is a core which is called engineers and mechanical engineers, to which he belonged. Their work is to maintain the machinery and research and upgrade the machine. So, for example, when we were in Kashmir, when we were posted in, when he was posted in Kashmir, his 3 years of tenure, he dedicated on how to make snow scooters more safe to be used on high altitude Siachen. So we were in Udhampur, and that's where, and we lived a life that time. It was a lot of insurgency, and we lived a life where we used to be in school, kept standing in school for 2 more hours because a bomb blast took place 3 hours, 3 kilometers away. So we couldn't go home, and we have lived that life. So it was, but even even then, it was very normal. It just happened. We couldn't do anything about it. So we just stay in a safe place. The reason we were into this and were very important is because of my mother's side also, because her father, so my Nanaji was also in the army, my mama was also in the army, and we all have, and my Nana, when he was posted in Kashmir, when my mom was small, they were in Srinagar, and he chose to keep his family with him. So that meant that they did not have access to an English medium school. It was only an Urdu medium school. So they were homeschooled that time. The concept of homeschooling has been a part of our life for a very long time, without actually knowing what it means.
Wow.
So
wow.
This
is
the
simply
background.
Wow.
So this is the background, and the exposure I as a child had because of going on these various postings was that by the time I reached college, I had seen almost 3/4 of India. And that has a lot of effect on how I'm educating my daughter now, because I have those friendships, I have those people, I have those access. So now that is my as a interest in sharing more information about Fauj as such from a very inside perspective. Now I'm going to come to the one point. So everyone thinks that Fauj means banduk uthao and battlefield mein jao. That is just one core of army. That is just one core. So the entire army, air force, and navy. So when we talk about defense services, the main three are Indian Army, Indian Air Force, and Indian Navy. The Indian Navy is responsible for keeping the waters safe. The Indian Air Force for the airspace, and Indian Army for the land. And Indian Army is the largest of these three. They are now integrated under one person, one command, one officer, and they are working on an integrated front because we need the integration. So Indian Navy doesn't have too many of bifurcations in terms of departments, but they have different ships. Like today we have in paper INS Vikrant. It's an indigenous. So they work on ships. Even their land spaces are also called INS, which stands for Indian Navy ship. So everything is around INS. Even their hospital in Bombay is called INS Ashwin. It's not a ship. It's a proper hospital, but it's called INS Ashwin. So every section, every department is an INS. It's a ship. It's seen as a ship. When it comes to Air Force, they have different sections in terms of the technical team, the command base. Then when it comes to flying, there are cargo helicopters, there are choppers, so helicopters, and then you have the light combat aircrafts, and then the MiGs and IOs. So their departments are based on the type of aircraft that they are doing. This is a very large. I'm not going to go too much into technicals. So, for example, yesterday, we had the article of the helicopter flyer in the name. It's there in the paper. So they vary from according to which aircraft they are flying. That's a more larger thing. When it comes to Indian Army, they are dependent on the work they do. So then we have the infantry, which goes onto the war. That is one section of it. Then there are people. Now, people, when they go on war, for example, there is a lot that goes in behind it. There needs to be someone who's going to maintain the machines and the ammunitions. Then there is a department which is going to supply everything. And when it comes to supply, it means everything right from food to ammunition. So there's a lot of rations, ammunition that you're like, there's a company which is supplying. But then what about the ration? What about the clothes? What about water? What about basics? So there is an entire company called the Army Supply Corps. So Army is divided in different corps. So then you have the Army Supply Corps, which basically their work is, so in Pune, if you see, there is an ASC depot, which the work of ASC is to procure and give ration to everyone in Army right now. Basic they have everyone has heard about the canteen facility and everything. So this is their works. This has got nothing to do with going on war, but this is required from a day-to-day perspective. Then you have the maintenance, which is the EME core, which is into that. Then there is another called signals. They are responsible for the entire IT infrastructure of your army. The communication that happens, it cannot be the kind of things that they have to do, and they have to be above the world. They have their hackers, they have people who can hack into it. They are sitting there, including the kind of the towers that can be set up, the communication, the wireless communication, the mobile communication, because every officer has a personal mobile. So how to control that so that sensitive information doesn't go out? That all things is controlled by signals. So like this, we have multiple, then the Northeast may have the Gorkhas, and there are different platoons, there are different brigades, there are different commands, and they work together. So when I talk about options, when it's come down to the careers, so in difference, there's of course one is the fighting, then education core is a huge department, which is only about education. And when they talk about education, it's for educating not only the officers, but everyone right from the lowest Jawan to the families of Jawans, and giving them opportunities to grow. So right now I am involved with a couple of companies where I'm helping the women of the married to these Jawans and ours to complete their education. That's also a project that we are doing with AAC. So it's education is one. Then comes, as I explained, signals is one. Then there is Army Supply Corps, which is all about supply. So it's like the courier. It's like the supply chain of army, which is like literally like the backbone of it, because ration gets delivered every week. It's huge work, and it's a huge corps. That's where my grandfather was. Then there's something called Rashtra Rifles, which is only about about ammunition and everything. That's where my mama worked. And then I have uncles work with signals. Now I also have my friends who are currently in the army. So they are some of them. Now when it comes to medical field, okay, then I'm going to come to medical field, because huge, when there is anything, even forget war, when there is COVID, there is so much, and we all know about the huge hospitals that are available. So even the hospitals, even when you look at the medical field has a research section, an education section. Then they have the regular hospitals. We have the general surgeons and all the specialists. Then there is a separate dental corps, a very specific dental corps, and there is also a veterinary corps. So a person who loves working with animals can also join army. Imagine this. This is something which I tell you.
That's really interesting. I mean, who knew?
Yeah, exactly. Because the reason is because we need animals on high altitude. There are places where humans and vehicles just can't go. So there is so we in Pune, if you see, so then we also have sniffer dogs. In Pune, there is a dog unit, and they are trained sniffer dogs. And they are given the ranks of officers. They are captains and lieutenants, the dogs, and they are sweethearts of the first order. And so we have that unit in India. So if someone likes to work with animals, you can join Fauj. Next is again, so this is medical. Then comes the law. The army law, if someone wants to be a lawyer, you can still join army, become a lawyer with the army. Army gets bashed on with a lot of cases, and they have to file a lot of cases. So they need a full core of lawyers. And it's there. The Army Law Colleges Associate is based in Pune, very close to our house. So then after that comes the management side of things. So they need a lot of people to do the basic administrative and management work.
Okay.
Army also has taken care of NCC, which is like the entry point for a lot of people to come. So then they get deputed to various sections. So they're in NCC. So the every NCC battalion right now. So NCC cadets are still not Faujis. They're still civilians. They are joined NCC, but they are the person who is handling that battalion is always a Fauji. It's always usually a full colonel. So there is then if someone wants to be an educator, as I said, if someone wants to be in education, you can become an educationist. I know so many of my friends who are in Fauj right now have taken study leave to come pursue their PhDs right now. There is always a scope to study. The moment you say, I want to study more, there are n number of options available. Then there is also, if someone wants to work in the welfare section for people, there's also something called the AWA. So there's all these things have AWA, Army Wives Welfare Association, Air Force Wives Welfare Association, Indian Navy Welfare Association. They work for the welfare of the families. So someone can also do their volunteer work and they can work there. Other than that, as I told you, then in Army, in the medical, I forgot to talk about the ALC, which is the Artificial Limb Center. That's where my father was there. So they only make artificial limbs. There's a huge research going on. And that is not only for, it's of course for mainly for Faujis, but then there are some civilians who are helped. And in ALC, the people who used to work with my father were civilians who now have their own setup and they manufacture artificial limbs for civilians. ASC is Army Supply Corps is a place where civilians can apply for a job and work in a Fauji setup without becoming a Fauji. But there is a huge amount of support required in terms of administrative services. If you look at our canteens that we have, the CSD canteens that we have, almost all the people who are sitting at the teller machine, who are handling the administrators, are either retired officers or civilians. Then I'm going to come down to the research division. So DRDOs, we have heard of them.
Correct.
In DRDOs, majority of the people are civilians. They are not Faujis, but they have research. They're doing their research work for Fauj.
Right.
You know, today there is something that I came across in today's paper in Times of India. There has been a notification that has been sent out where Army has said that we have 20 research problems in front of us related to IT. So we invite companies and civilians to apply and help us find out those solutions.
Oh.
It's in today's paper. I just read it just now. So the options of working in different spheres it's literally like a small ecosystem and a country inside a country. Totally. You name the field and you can enter.
So this is really interesting. I mean, there are so many opportunities, but then, so how does one enter? I mean, tomorrow, exactly. If I feel like, or my child feels like, what is the process? And if we are not from this background, are we welcome? Do we get enough opportunities? So these are my two questions to you.
So yes, there are the opportunity available to enter Army is same for everyone, irrespective from the background that they come from. Okay? The first thing that they see is, of course, physical is required because you never know where you will have to go. So for example, even if you are with, as I said, with the supply corps, you might have to go and live near the Siachen Glacier to maintain the point from there. So physical capability is very important.
Correct.
Okay, so that's one thing that is good. So for that, I always say that for that, there's an exam which is called the SSB, which everyone has to clear. That's the ultimate aim. That's a physical test to enter Army for any corps. So physical fitness is very important. Now, I'm going to talk from what are the options available after 12th. So after 12th, we all know about the NDA entrance exam.
Correct.
Okay, there's an entrance exam at NDA, which is to join. So that's where they join. That's where the child has to apply to join any of the corps, the regular corps. So which can be infantry, it can be RR, it can be n number of things. So that's one. That's the non-technical corps. Okay, that's after 12. Now, very important for especially for homeschoolers to know is that maths is the most important.
Oh. Okay.
On the day of NDA of giving exam, so NDA exam, entrance exam is conducted. First, they have to appear for the maths exam. If they clear that, then only they can appear for the next one. If they fail in the maths exam, it's gone. So maths is the most important. Also, it's one condition is that the maths has to be chosen at 10th standard, and all exams of 10th standard have to be cleared in one shot.
Right.
Means that NIOS, we cannot give it in. So if your child is keen on giving on entering Fauj and you want to give a chance, you cannot separate the exams. It has to be given in one cycle, one exam cycle. After that is then comes a time. So this is when after 12th. Then after that comes the technical side, for which people can also children can also join Fauj after completing their engineering.
Okay.
So for you have the option which is called the OTA, which is Officer Training Academy in Chennai, as well as the signal. So there's multiple ways of either after joining 12th or after completing your technical education, you can join. So when my father joined army, he completed his engineering and then joined. So he was placed in a according to the electronics engineering that he did.
Right, right.
So it's just not कि 12th के बाद नहीं हुआ तो नहीं हुआ. So there is a way to enter the technical side. So when I say technical, is the EME core, it's the signals core, you can join. Other than that, the law college, then there's an entrance exam for AFMC, which is the medical core, which is also after 12th.
Okay.
That has an entrance exam. So there, of course, you don't need to take maths, but they have that physics, chemistry, biology is compulsory, and they look at it. Again, same reason. All exams of 10th standard and 12th have to be cleared in one shot, in one attempt.
Correct.
It's very important. Then there is an entrance exam for the law college, as I said. There's an entrance exam for that. Then there is an entrance. So when it comes for AFMC exams, they also have an entrance exam for the vet core.
Correct.
So for every section there is a long list. You go to the army ke website bolo. So again, all these institutes are by army. There is hardly anything but the Navy and Air Force until unless there's very specific. Like the Navy has an institute for ocean studies.
Right.
There will be somewhere. Now Navy also, now there is a very specific, I would like to talk about, is a very specific career, which is very interesting because I knew someone who belonged. So it's called naval architecture.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it is someone who is an engineer the person has to be an engineer, studied architecture first, and they are made to study architecture for some time because they are the ones who are the backbone of designing and building a ship.
Correct.
And the intake is literally just 10 per year from around India. It is so niche.
Niche.
They're very
cream of the cream. Creme a la creme.
Exactly. But and the kind of training that they go through and everything. So it's like a very small group responsible for this. So even if someone has done architecture, can also apply for it because they have that basic sense of architecture.
Wow.
Even is interested in doing architecture and designing, and even designing and interiors for some matter, that is also required because a lot of times that knowledge is important to create buildings, to
Correct.
maintain buildings, to build buildings, and not only buildings for official purpose but also for the families to be built. So it's you can literally any aspect you have, any interest you have, there is an option available in the army to join and contribute. So and everything is available on the website. It's just a little bit of research from your side, or you can connect with me. I can talk about this for the whole day, but I don't want to. If I go into details, I can just literally talk about every small detail.
You can share the website name afterwards.
Yeah, it's called indianarmy.nic.in. It's the government website. Simple.
Okay.
And so it's there. So the entry point, again, it depends on how your child is. So there is an entry point after 12. There's an entry point after graduation. So let's put it as simple as that. There are n number of opportunities available. You have to just find out where you want to get and how you want to get.
So
very important. Physical, the more you have, the larger portfolio you have of a physicality, the better it is. One important point I would say, chashma can be a problem, because that is something very, very, very important when it comes to joining army. So there are some criterias where there is a relaxation, but again, I will not go into details because it varies from, it's there. So chashma hai, so you will have to just kind of do a little bit more research, connect with the institutes who give the proper training, and they are there. There are some of my uncles only who are running some beautiful institutes at very minimal cost to help such people come out.
So
okay, but
someone who wants to go into, sorry.
No, so one thing that I was
lag.
As a point. So I'm just saying, be very careful, keeping in mind that there is a huge difference in the hierarchy in army. So we have the officers and then the non-commissioned officers. So there is a huge difference in them. And even a hierarchy wise, even education wise, even the family life mentality and how they live is very different. So when I talk about Agniveer, everyone thinks that Agniveer say you can join. No, Agniveer is specifically for people from little bit of economically backward areas, or even someone who just wants to taste army and Fauji life, but they will join only at Jawan level. They will not have any. So Jawan is the lowermost level in the army. So looking at the cultural background, looking at where you stand in and how you have your family life, I always advise that try to join as an officer. It's a complete different world.
Okay.
So even as an officer, you are in the higher side of the management.
Right.
But if you are helping someone, like so whatever information I'm sharing, it definitely we are going to share with someone who comes from, like for example, our maid's children or someone we know, who cannot afford to have an officer in the house. Yes, there have been things. One of our maid's daughter is now an officer.
Wow.
I know that.
Wow.
He's an officer, and the person who used to be in our house she has reached because she has the capability, but everyone cannot. But we also have a lot of people whose children have joined army, and now they're at a Havaldar level, and they are very well educated.
Right.
Like we are library, they're the army education core people. The Havaldars and everyone are someone with whom you can talk in English and you can just have a normal conversation the way you have. So they are not uneducated people, but it's just an hierarchy in terms of how and when they join, their educational background, and then how they are moving.
Correct.
Be careful in terms of understanding the difference, that there is a very stark difference when it comes to entry point inside the Fauj. Either that they join at the Jawan and the Havaldars and ORs level, which is the non-commissioned officers, and then the commissioned officers, which is the actual officer category, the lowest of which is a lieutenant. So then you have a lieutenant. Same thing. So this, as an example of Fauj, the same thing is at the Navy and Air Force also. But understand that Navy and Air Force are more technical fields.
Correct.
So their entry criteria is also very high. So they are extremely, because they are not people who are going to, like a Navy ship person, he's not going to go and actually be in the battlefield and doing the to know how to be on a ship and control those technicals to be able to go up.
Correct. Okay, Ketika, sorry, we are running out of time on this meeting, but I request you all, I'm sharing a new link on the group. Please use that link and rejoin. Okay. So we are exiting from this, but just because it's 1 minute left now. So we'll exit from here,
and then I can take it.
And please take it forward from there, because we want to listen to this. This is very interesting.
Okay.
I request everyone to use the new link, which I'm sharing in a minute.